right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again. And we are going to be kicking off this webinar tonight about why mid-sized organizations are adopting zero trust. I'm going to be your host. My name is Tal Aufer. I'm VP Product for Perimeter 81. And this is the agenda for our session today. We're going to talk about the reasons according to which mid-sized organizations are faster to adopt zero trust. We're going to have a very lively discussion. Then we're going to go to Q&A and then a demo of the Perimeter 81 product. Our guests for tonight are Richard Stiennon, who's an IT analyst and a very beloved guest in our webinars, and Amit Bareket, our founder and CEO. Just a bit of housekeeping. Notice you guys have Q&A option on the right side of the pane on the BrightTalk platform. Feel free to ask any questions. We're going to be ending the technical session by answering those questions again in the end of the entire session. All right. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Amit. Amit, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tal, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I'm excited to be here together with my friend Richard. Thank you, Richard. I'd be happy to walk you through today on a few trends that we see in our company when we're interacting with over 2,800 businesses that are doing that migration to zero trust and secure cloud networking. And share with you the challenges and why they are the first to adapt and why mid-sized organizations are the pioneers in adopting zero trust and secure corporate network over the internet. I'd like to start and to give you some high-level context. Although it's very straightforward and makes perfect sense, it is important to reiterate it, is that the fact that the internet became the new corporate network today. Employees are working outside the office. Resources are moving to the cloud. And the perimeter, as we know it today, is going through revolution, not evolution. On the other end, 5G and fiber, if you think about it, coming to age. Today, everyone has a fast internet available anywhere, right? From their home, while they're on the go, in the train, or anywhere they open their laptops. Most often they will have a very blazing fast internet connection. And that work from home and the mobility alongside the 5G and fiber adoption is driving a change, is driving a shift in the way we consume security and networking, and allowing us to move from hardware-based solution to software-based solutions. And here in the journey, in that revolution, as I mentioned, mid-sized organizations, specifically technology-forward companies, are the pioneers and are leading the way for how small, medium, or very large enterprises will consume network and security over the next 10 years. And they have a critical part in this journey. Small, medium enterprises, as you can see here from two different reports, one made by Flexera and the second one was by Okta, right? Seems to adapt much quicker, right? Both utilization of cloud and security and zero trust than the large enterprises. We'll talk about why, but that is definitely when we always talk about larger enterprises, how they are utilizing, or everyone wants to become like an enterprise-grade security tools in place, missing the point that they themselves, right, the mid-sized organizations that are relatively technology forward, are setting the tone and are adapting and basically picturing the future of network security. Richard, do you have anything to add on what I've said?
Yeah, Amit, thanks. As you're talking, I'm thinking way back in history When I first got into the internet and security, I had an ISP, and I was getting automotive companies on the internet for the first time. And I remember I went into ITT Automotive, which is not a mid-sized company. They're huge, or they were then. They weren't ready to get the whole company on the internet, but they said, you know what, we'll put a terminal in the lobby and put that on the internet so people can look things up and stuff, and just demonstrate how technology forward we are. The first day we got that up and running, I got all these calls because people were going to this public terminal, logging in and browsing to completely inappropriate websites, of course. And that was days, years before we had content URL filtering, which evolved into secure web gateways. But over time, I remembered that, and how even at SonicWall, Fortinet, WatchGuard, all the early firewall vendors had to add the secure web gateway capability to their appliances. And they had to filter that access, because you can't just give everybody access all the time to the internet, because people are people and they do things that contribute to a hostile work environment, or they're wasting times and playing around on Facebook. So practically every organization in the world restricts people's access to what they can do on the internet from work. Well, that's great until everybody can get on the internet with their work phone or their work laptop anywhere in the world. And of course, that exposes them to malware and phishing sites and all the rest. So there's no ability to control, and protect those users. And, so for the longest time, we had, blue coat devices at the top 7,000 companies in the world. They could afford $100,000 appliance sitting next to the firewall. But that is disappearing as they expand to multiple offices. They move to a hub and spoke over MPLS. And we're talking ancient history here, but that's how most large corporations are. Compare that to a modern company who never paid, the $2,000 to $10,000 a month to cost to get your own MPLS circuit between your office in Europe and the United States, for instance. They go, why should I do that? It only costs $150 a month to get high-speed bandwidth to the internet over broadband. So that's where the transition away from the old corporate hub and spoke MPLS networks started to go to the internet. And of course, mobile devices, and you mentioned 5G. I've got 5G in my office here. All those have contributed to everybody can get the internet all sorts of different ways. So we have to change that complete paradigm, and that's exactly what you've done at Perimeter 81. And that's the attraction for those technology forward companies that don't have to deal with a big old data center that still holds the mainframes running COBOL programs. Just an organization that's adopting new technology as fast as they can so that it can help them grow and be successful companies. So I see having a zero trust, a SASE solution as a critical component of digital transformation.
Absolutely. And Richard, what do you think how does the very large enterprise, right? Let's take, for example, Intel, the network, the corporate network, how it will shape and look like over the next 5 to 10 years?
So it's what the really great thing is for a large corporate network like an Intel. They've got this huge budget, and they have a team just to manage and optimize those circuits, right? They look at them every month, decide if they can, move down a couple megabits in bandwidth that they pay for, or they're looking at how much they spike over it and have to up the bandwidth they pay for. All those people aren't needed anymore. Now you just negotiate local connections to your ISP. It could be the exact same company that sells you those circuits, right? It's usually the phone company. And then, just now you've got that control, but it's distributed. You don't have circuit outages to worry about because you've got a backup to a different ISP. And your data center might even have a satellite backup in case of disaster like a backhoe. So I see that every organization, from super large ones like the Intels, General Motors, the big banks, have to move this direction.
And what we're going to see, and I'm adding to everything that you said, that the very large enterprises, their network will become simpler and simpler over time, as basically the internet is the new corporate network. Do you agree with it?
Totally agree. It's even the subject of a book I wrote. And it's coupled with the fact that the cloud is the corporate data center, because there's certainly no sense in having the physical plant required to run a data center when you can just rent space on Amazon or Google or Azure.
Interesting. So basically, as I think about it, and I think our team also in Print 81 thinks about it, is that the very large enterprise has a lots of legacy in place, right? They have talent that is trained and is focusing on maintaining the past, while technology forward mid-sized companies that don't carry with them that legacy are already in a place that they can shape the corporate network to adjust to that new reality.
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking for. I'm sure it's already happened, but I'm looking for the first case study that shows mega company buying the up and coming technology forward company in the same space, and realizing after doing so that it doesn't make any sense to make them do what the legacy company is doing, and instead goes the other way, and the legacy company adopts the technology platforms and methodologies that the small company does.
Yeah, interesting. I do believe that I will move forward another slide in a minute, but just want to end that discussion, which is very intriguing to me, is I do believe that the mid-sized companies that are technology forward will basically drive the demand for simpler and more features, and will shape and help vendors like us, right, to understand how does a secure corporate network needs to look like over the internet. And as the larger enterprise will continue and simplify their networks, right, because today the employee works from home, there isn't any mean, right, whether they have a very complex and high-hand legacy equipment in their office when nobody is in the office, right? It will basically pull down those enterprises to utilize a user-friendly solutions that are fitting that simplicity. I worked previously at IBM, Richard, and we utilized the same time, which is a very complex messaging system. And eventually, IBM itself moved to utilize Slack, a product that was built from a modern environment and a modern understanding. And I do believe that it will happen as well in security and networking.
Yep.
Cool. So let's continue. There are multiple points, and we've talked about it, Richard, a little bit, right, on the different points. But what I wanted to hear is to go through the list of the reasons, right, why mid-size enterprises in technology forward companies are shaping the future, and why they're such a critical part in that revolution, right? We've mentioned multiple reasons, from the hybrid workforce, that the born to cloud, looking to easier and simpler solutions, convergence, and that complexity gap that many security tools that are having and managed from a different ways and are creating, and the fact that the internet today is the new corporate. And I wanted Richard to go over point by point with you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the first point that I would like to put on the table is the fact that the hybrid work is here to stay, right? I remember, it's actually a funny story, Richard, when in 2019, I met with Insight Partners and presented one of our largest investors to date. and a great partner of ours, and I presented them Print 81, and we have a slide that by 2022, 75% of the workforce will work 1 day at home. Only in 2019.
How'd you
And
know that?
they laughed at us, right? And then COVID happened.
That's great. Great story. I love it. You were prescient. Now, I've got a much older story. Cast your mind back to 1994, which were the Summer Olympics in Atlanta, Georgia. And the traffic was so bad, and that's a very, congested city already. Traffic was so bad that major employers told everybody to work from home. And back then, I had people say, "This is it. This is the beginning of work from home." Obviously, that was not the case. It took, what is 26 years for it to actually start happening.
Wow. So this is a trend that COVID really accelerated, but it's here to stay. And as 5G and fiber are available anywhere and coming to age, and you have fast internet, you don't need to drive to the office in order to be able to do work. So there's a great flexibility wherever you open your computer. So shift from a site-centric security to people-centric security is a key. And this is something that is creating a great demand in ZTNA and Zero Trust solutions and SASE solutions, as they are natively people-centric. It applies the same policy no matter where the employees are. Right?
Exactly.
And I think that is something that there is a consensus everywhere that it's here to stay. And when COVID started, I saw many businesses have reduced their security posture just to enable business.
Oh yeah, they opened up RDP and told everybody just remotely connect to your desktop, and that's your solution.
Right. And now there is a technical debt, I call it, a security debt that they need to take care of, and to reduce this attack surface that exists. So this is definitely one driver. Another driver is that the small organizations are utilizing cloud resources. So not only the employees are going outside the office and working remotely, the resources themselves are leaving the office, right? Elvis left the building. Now, these two trends, leaving companies with appliances and legacy security solutions that are protecting empty offices. Logically, it doesn't make sense. Do you have anything to add, Rich?
Yeah, I would say that 85% is underestimating, and it'll certainly be 100% sometime, just in the next few years. When you think of a company that doesn't consume software as a service, it's hard to imagine, right? But yeah, that local restaurant or grocery store, maybe they don't, but I see solutions offered to them that are much easier than installing software that requires you to upgrade your Windows XP or your Windows 2000 server. You just connect to it on the website, get a subscription, off you go, and that's just the wave of the future anyways. Wave of the present, but yeah, they're always late adapters and they will be there.
So mobility, cloud, right? It definitely breaks the perimeter as we know it. But one of the things that I found that our customers really like, although it not necessarily goes intuitively with security, right? Sometimes companies are looking complex things. They think that the complex will get them secured, but when you introduce complexity, you do many mistakes setting up a very simple secure policy. And what we found that, and I think it's something that differentiates Print 81 in the SASE space, is the ease of use and simplicity. And when you introduce simplicity to security, you increase the security posture by multiple levels. And simplicity, for example, for Print 31, requires heavily investment. We over invest, right, in order to make things easier and simple. And
the telltale for me is, do the big consulting firms jump on the bandwagon and build practices around it? And you might remember the identity space 20 years ago, whatever. I was at PwC, and they would put 100 consultants at, in my time, Chrysler Motors, just to get them up and running on a consolidated identity system. And this is before Active Directory was everywhere. And that's I don't see that in SASE at all, because you'll go right to a customer and have them up and running in very, very short time, right? They do have to have identity, right? Then it's super easy. If they don't, then they have to go through that exercise of collapsing their force into a single force, etc. But if they've got identity, and that's, I think, the case with medium-sized enterprises, is they probably have a simpler identity infrastructure already. They haven't done a lot of M&A, so they don't have multiple systems from Oracle to IBM to Microsoft, and they can make the transition so fast. And I think that's the reason that SASE is taking off so quickly.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the Office 365 for emails, right? It's very, you can switch from an email server to Gmail very, very quickly, right?
Right. Yep.
But the thing is, I believe that not only it's easier to migrate and increase immediately your security level from the on-prem legacy equipment that secures your empty office, the day-to-day management, right? We find, I always hear, right, from different companies, that they say that the lack of IT and security personnel that is really trained and talent, and we call it the cybersecurity complexity gap. You introduce more tools, more solutions, you think you are more secured, but you have more alerts, and you're afraid to open the alerts because you'd like to avoid it.
Yeah. Every alert means some work. Yeah. Yeah, when I think of the entire stack of things you would need if you had your own server in a closet and it was business critical because it was dealing with customers or something, or in the back office in a manufacturing plant, you've got to have a firewall. And the next gen firewalls already collapsed a lot of stuff, including the secure web gateway and IPS and all the rest of that stuff. But you also have to be load balancing it because you got to keep it up and running all the time. And then every time there's a new attack vector, you got to buy a new tool and add it in and make sure they all work together. And every single appliance has got to be highly available. So much easier to just have everybody connect to a massive, essentially, cloud security stack and filter through that.
Interesting. So that I think it, as you highlighted, Richard, it really, the simplicity comes in so many shapes and forms to have a quicker deployment, to easier migration, to move away from that site-centric security to people-centric security. And also the day-to-day work, right? Today, specifically with the global economy and the fact that people are short in budget and you don't want to overbuild, right, a very expensive IT and personnel, because the thing that is most expensive is not the licensing for that SaaS, is the manpower, right? The hours and people that you invest into keeping an organization secure. And when you can unify a range of security tools and to have it in one consolidated policy that is easier to read, right? You have one policy in front of your eyes. It's easier to manage. You don't have 7, 8 different management consoles, and every console has a red button in the top with 325 alerts that you need to click, and you avoid clicking it because you know that it will generate a lot of work to you. So you want to simplify the complex, and I think this is a great driver where the mid-size companies that are really lacking in the people, right? Try to stay lean on the other end, want to keep themselves secure and protect their resources and all their environments that are existing everywhere. It's really a great way to solve that. And connects to the convergence of the core, right? That complexity not only comes from the ease of use of the solutions, right? It comes also from integrations, how my existing environment connects with modern identity provider. I migrated my team from on-premise Active Directory to Okta, right? Now, how can I make my legacy infrastructure and security tools working in harmony where I create an environment that 1 + 1 = 3, right? And how to simplify that. And
there's a report going around recently. Somebody surveyed 50 CISOs or something, and they said, "Oh, we've got to converge," but what they meant was vendor consolidation. And in other words, if there are, first of all, there are 3,060 vendors that I've counted, and those are divided among 680 subcategories. So you need a lot of those products to do well, and you can't get them from one company. You can't go to your alma mater and say, okay, we're just going to buy IBM, like people said years and years ago. You can't just go to Microsoft and just buy from Microsoft. Some companies would like you to just buy from them, and they do have a whole lot of products, but that runs into the best of breed versus the converged idea. But you can carve out the things that need convergence, and for sure, network access and security should converge completely. And that was done by some very, very successful, huge companies with their appliances. And now we're just looking at something that's displacing all those appliances in the cloud.
Interesting. That leads me to the last point, and now I believe that when we outline these reasons, it makes perfect sense, right? And for a company to continue and invest in the legacy infrastructure, the way they work today is basically an investment that, in my opinion, is being done to the wrong direction, and the direction led by, eventually, I think that the bottom line, right, is that the internet is the new corporate network. And the question is, how to secure my organization over the internet, and with the distribution of employees, applications, right, SaaS solutions, cloud, 5G, fiber, software solutions that are becoming easier and more maintainable. The attack surface that on the other end really increases, because I don't need to protect only my office, only my home. Now I sleep and drink and everywhere, right?
Yep. And as those employees go remote, you essentially get you give them back 2 or more hours a day of their lives. Usually they give that back to you in the terms of getting online at 6 a.m. to check their email and know what's coming before they have breakfast or walk the dog. And you get them for a much more extended time frame during the day, and meetings start getting scheduled at very strange hours. But if you've got a team in Singapore and Europe, you find one time where everybody can get on a Zoom call and do that, get some work done. Whereas if they had to go to the office first, that would just not happen. So it's enabling business as well.
Absolutely. So it goes end by end, right? We increase productivity, and I think many people it's a hot topic, right? That the fact that we are hybrid. We allow everyone to work everywhere, and the borders between my personal life to work life are fading. But on the other hand, the businesses would like to allow making business, and because they're making business and they open up the networks, it goes on the other way. So zero trust, right, which I translated to a people-centric security, is so critical, and why companies and businesses need to start and think, but understand what is the destination, where we're gonna end up, and how can I plan my route and the waypoints together. You don't need to go all in on day zero,
Right.
but it is super important to understand where I'd like to go.
You can have a path. And, keep in mind, to me, zero trust is that we've removed the network from our policy, our security policy and access policy. We don't care what network you're on. We may care what your geolocation is, but, your network connection or your phone will tell us that. So if you travel to a country that, we've got different restrictions on, we're not going to let you get access. But we only care about you and your device and the applications that you're getting access to, and including all the websites. And that's it. Network's not part of what's there anymore. So what happened to the vaunted firewall? We don't need it.
Excellent. So, Rich, it was a great discussion, and I really enjoyed it. And it's definitely clear that small SMEs, right, and technology for the SMBs as well, are shaping the way we will consume network and security over the next 5 to 10 years. And you've been tracking the history, Richard, with your books every year, of how, right, the internet security is shaping, and that point of time, surely picturing like a very revolutionary time period along the journey, and I look forward to see how things will develop over the years. But definitely the time from 2020 to 2022, right, where the world has changed, is definitely something that will be on the history books, specifically yours.
I think so.
And we do have a few questions from the audience, but first of all, I wanted to give James, right?
Actually, Amit, we're going to do the quick Q&A first, and then James is going to do the demo.
Okay. So
all right.
We'll be happy to do Q&A now, and then
let me select some of the questions that were raised. So first question, what are possible barriers to entrance for small, medium enterprises? What will be harder for them than for larger organizations?
Good question. The barrier that I see is just the understanding and discovering that there's a better way to do it. And they quite often, getting back to the technical debt and security debt that Amit talked about, they quite often will say, yeah, but we just paid for deploying all these appliances to all the plants. And even though you can quickly demonstrate the return on investment of moving away from those is very, very fast, well, you've still got that. What about these assets we bought? So you really have to overcome that and realize, this is the wave of the future. So jump on the wave now.
I couldn't agree more with Richard on that point, that it connects to think about what is the destination, where you'd like to take the security, right? What is the direction you'd like to take? Just make sure that you walk in that direction, not go in the other direction just because yesterday you paid $2,500 to whatever, right? To different solutions. So always see that you invest your resources going forward into the right place.
Great answers. Thanks, guys. Another question for Richard. Is Azure different from Google Cloud? Well, I think obviously they are different,
Yeah.
but I think maybe people want to hear a little bit more about the differences.
Yeah, if you're building on both of them and looking at the decision of where to put your application, they're extremely different. I've talked to people who are building an app and they launch in one, but then their customers or users request them to be in the other. If you think about it, both of them have giant networks, right? And Google even goes all the way down to the home or the office. That giant network really helps your throughput, bandwidth, latency, etc. So both very, very good there. I think it comes down to a business relationship. So if you're a state, local government or public school district that's already all in on Google, then Google Cloud is usually the choice you make. If you're a big organization that's all in on Office 365, you're essentially using Azure now. So you may choose to go to Azure. So that's, I'm not really seeing differences that get to the level, well, this one's more secure or this one's better.
Okay, good. I think there's a comment here that even gig workers are using SaaS, which is a fair statement. I think, let's talk a little bit about the SaaS penetration in, everybody's life.
So I can address that, and I will let Richard to add. I think one of the and this enhanced the importance of the mid-sized enterprises. The mid-sized enterprises, from one end, are shaping the way corporate networks needs to be secured, and larger enterprise will follow. But on the other end, it also filters down market to the small businesses and even later on consumers, how to secure their internet and day-to-day activities, right? Everyone, SaaS, right, solutions like Gmail, it applies for consumers as well. Very large enterprises are utilizing today Gmail, right? So, and the security challenges are the same in some regards. And I do think that on the one hand, there is an importance of SME in this chain, right? In this flywheel of zero trust and thus in the evolution that happens of SMEs that will affect and filter it down to gig workers, as we mentioned here, that are using SaaS and will need the similar solutions like that, but also to the upper market. And this is actually a great thing to think about, how that will basically develop on both ends for SMBs and even smaller teams because there's a fuse, and for the larger enterprise. So it's great observation.
And 5 or 6 years ago, I wrote how the telecoms, especially as they start offering 5G, so all of a sudden they're into, essentially broadband connection to your handheld devices and your laptops, are going to have to add in essentially, we didn't call it SASE back then, but I envisioned that cloud security solution that would protect all those endpoints from network attacks. It hasn't happened yet, but you see them, investigating that arena. Because if you think about it, they already own the edge, the old central office that all the copper used to terminate. But now all of their cable lines and their cell phone lines coming from the towers terminate there. And an ideal place. They've got their own data centers already. They're paying for the real estate. Can't get rid of them because they're all about physical equipment. They could do it, but I haven't seen them do it.
Good point. All right, one more. Where do you see the companies investing in cloud first? Is it in the data center, security, controllers, email? Where do they go to the cloud first?
Ooh, I know this one. No. Yeah, so first of all, they start with SaaS. So so a leader might be Salesforce.com, and then Microsoft Office 365. And so they're already using SaaS. So they don't need their email server internally. They don't need their internal CRM system. And then they move their HR systems to a SaaS. And pretty soon all of their systems are SaaS. So they don't need all those servers in the data center. And then the next phase is to move their own apps to the cloud. So they just get better response time and elasticity and all the benefits of being in the cloud. Now they don't need their own servers in their data center. So pretty soon the data center is gutted because there's nothing left. And the organization, a new CIO or somebody in charge of digital transformation says, we're cloud first. We're going to look for ways to do it in the cloud before we ever install hardware or new software licenses inside the organization. And that's been going on for 8 or 9 years. I thought we were like 100% there, but that's only because I only talk to organizations that are technology first in the first place. But no, there's, when we saw the SolarWinds attack against 30,000 on-prem Microsoft Exchange servers, we knew there were a lot of organizations that hadn't made the transition yet.
That's good. All right, we got time for one last question, and I think this is going to be a good segue to James's demo. How does Perimeter 81 help medium businesses ensure security in hybrid multi-cloud environment while retaining the technology assets? I swear I didn't write this one, but it's a pretty good one. So I don't know, Amit, do you want to quickly answer that before we hand it over to James?
Yeah, maybe I will let you, Tal. It's important. And
Definitely. I just wanted to say before I answer this, that we have many more questions, but we don't have the time to answer all of them. So feel free to reach out to us, and through the website or through our chat in the website. How does Perimeter 81 help medium businesses? So I think all the points that Amit and Richard made today are very relevant to the medium-sized business, right? The simplicity, the convergence, the need to deploy something for the hybrid workforce. These are all immediate needs of the mid-sized organizations that are even more urgent when it comes to mid-sized business because they are more fragile in some cases, right? They may be more fragile in this time of economic disturbance, and they can be more fragile due to COVID or any kind of epidemic. They need, smart tools to help them converge their security, protect against those threats that are coming from the outside, and they're coming from all directions all the time. And they need some tool to help them do that in a simple way because they don't have the time and energy to spend on complex security products. They need something that will just work and solve this problem for them. And I believe that Perimeter 81 is this kind of solution. And I'm going to let James show you what I just stated so you can rule it out for yourself. So James, go ahead, take it away. Richard, Amit, thank you so much again.
Perfect. Tal, thank you so much for the introduction. And Richard and Amit, it was very insightful. Been following the content of yours, Richard, for years now, and it's as interesting as ever. And I really appreciate the insights from you as well. But let's jump in. So I want to share with you a brief demonstration of the Perimeter 81 platform and to talk about how we're taking these concepts of the zero trust solution and bringing it into practice. And as Amit had said, that now zero trust security, it's changing from a site-centric model to a user-centric model. And so everything about Perimeter 81, the way we've designed it, is focusing in on the users of any organization who's adopting our tool. And the way we've designed it, obviously, is to see those users here. And naturally, when an organization is adopting the zero trust model, they have to import all of their users from a known identity provider. And one of the ways we make that easy is having built-in integrations to all of the leading identity providers. And as Richard said, the fastest way that people get into the cloud is through SaaS applications. And one of the easiest gateways that we've seen is the Google Workspace platform and the Microsoft Office 365 platform, which each comes with their own type of an identity provider outside of the box. And that's what we would say are probably the two most popular integrations to obtain identities of users into our Perimeter 81 platform. So we would support those two as defaults, but then also there's many more options. We can integrate with an on-premise Active Directory. We can integrate with an Okta account or OneLogin or Ping or essentially any identity provider that's based in the cloud that would integrate with SAML 2.0. So that's the first and most important step of Perimeter 81. And that identity is the foundation of which all the other capabilities that we have to offer are being built from. So naturally, what begins to happen is once you begin to populate users into groups on Perimeter 81, or into the platform, you'll assign them into groups and then create segmentation of access on the group level and into networks as a whole. So, the examples are very customized between companies, but maybe you have some contractors outside of the US and they would need to have access to a certain type of resource. Whereas other developers who are more senior in the internal part of the team have access to another environment. And we can begin to map out all of those different access rules and all of those different access policies by going one by one and creating group access on networks, or we can do this even more through our firewall capabilities. And both of those capabilities work very closely together. So to zoom out even further, the way we think about it is which users will have access on the network level. That's the layer 3 access. And then how do they have access on that layer 3? And we would write those rules in plain and written policies here on these firewalls. And that could be down to the specific user level with access to a specific IP address, port, protocol, or a list or a range of IPs. And so we're taking everything that has been done in the past and making it much more granular. And this is the signature capability of Perimeter 81 on the network level. Now, we can take this one step further, and I like to say that this is the ultimate iteration of zero trust access. When we think about segmenting resources, not just on the network level and down to specific addresses and ports and protocols on the layer 3, if we really abstract the network even further to a layer 7 categorization, and we publish only predefined resources to the external users, this is where we can get even closer to the ideal of zero trust that Richard and Amit have been talking about. And this comes down to a simple process. We call this the publishing process. We have to be mindful of what resources on our corporate network that we even want users to see. And when we want them to see it, we will predefine that based upon port, protocol, and IP address. And once we add in all of the predefined criteria that are needed for a user to authenticate onto that application, we will see the finished product here in a library of permitted applications that the user can get onto. And all that the user needs to do is just click on one of these links, and they could open up a new application in their browser. And this would be, as an example, a Jenkins server that might be running on one of our AWS or one of our GCP cloud instances. But we have this, and it's running in this tab. And everything about this is isolated from the actual network itself. My local machine, as this host sitting in a public network somewhere, not connected directly to the AWS or Google or Azure cloud environment, this machine is not connected to the resource at all. The same thing will happen for something like an RDP. If we get connected, then we'll have to be able to see this RDP session only through the browser. And it doesn't require a full tunnel. It doesn't require any full network layer access. And I can do anything that I would need to on this type of machine while I'm working through this session. But the session is entirely contained and entirely running on a single browser tab. So the moment that this browser tab is closed, my sessions are eliminated, and then I would have to re-authenticate myself to get back into those resources. Now, best of all, one of the things that we talk about quite a bit is the fact that it's good to have access, but it's even better to have visibility. And this is a crucial requirement for organizations who are going through their own internal audits, or they have external audits for compliance reasons like SOC 2 Type 2 or ISO 2701, or the newest type of audit that we've seen increasing on all of our customers is for cybersecurity insurance. If you'd like to have a cybersecurity insurance policy, you'll need to meet certain baseline requirements. Otherwise, you'll have higher premiums. So we can check here in real time to see all of the active users that are running on our network. And this is a small account, so there's only a few, but we can also see historical logs of all of the users, and this generates thousands of informational logs that we can see and we can search. And we can see everything down to even the device level. We can see how many total devices have been activated on our network and what is the health status of those devices. So these are critical capabilities that Perimeter 81 has to offer, and it shows you all of the details inside of your network and pertaining to your users of how they're being secured and where they're getting connected in from. So we are very proud of these capabilities, and we'd love to continue to show more. This is just meant as an introduction, but myself and Amit, we would be glad to continue the conversation, and we're easy to reach out to and easy to find. So that would be, for us, a pleasure to continue the conversation and show more. Tal and Amit, anything that you have a question or additional comments that I should show?
No, I think we're good. We can sign off on this webinar. Thank you again, James, Amit, and Richard. This is going to be available. This recording is going to be available on our website. We don't share the slides themselves, but the recording itself is going to be available. Thank you everyone for attending, and I'd like to remind you that next week we have another webinar as part of our Cyber Up. Cyber Awareness Month. And next week, we're going to talk about crawl, walk, and run in SASE with John Grady joining us as well. So it's going to be a super interesting one next week as well. Thank you, everyone, and hope to see you again next week.
Thanks, Tal.
Thank you very much.
Great demo,
Thank
James.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.